Question number 1. Which two conditions must be met for a Cisco router to automatically add a connected network to its routing table? Select 2. Which two conditions must be met for a Cisco router to automatically add a connected network to its routing table? Option A. The network is added using the IP route command. B. The interface is configured with an IP address. C. The ARP cache for the interface is cleared. Option D. The interface line and protocol status are active. Let's ask. Correct answer, select 2. The interface is configured with an IP address and the interface line and protocol status are active. Why these two are correct? A Cisco router automatically adds a connected network to the routing table only when 1. An IP address is configured on the interface. Without an IP, the router does not know the network. Number 2. The interface is up, line protocol up, administratively up, shows as up/up. If the interface is down or shut down, the connected route is removed. Why the other option are wrong? The network is added using the IP route command. That is for static route, not connected routes. And another option, the ARP cache for the interface is cleared. ARP has nothing to do with adding routes to the routing table. Connected route should appear like this. C for connected 192.168.1.0/24 is directly connected gigabit Ethernet. So the right option is the interface is configured with an IP address and the interface line and protocol status are active. Alright. Question number 2. A network engineer is checking a network device that has received route information from multiple sources. What criterion does the device use first when determining which path to take by default? What criterion does the device use first when determining which path to take by default? Option A. The route that has been active the longest. Option B. The route that was entered into the device first. Option C. The route with the highest cost. Option D. The route with the smallest administrative distance. I think this was the right answer. Alright. The correct answer is the route with the smallest administrative distance. Next question. Question number 3. An engineer needs to verify the current setting and timers of the routing protocols in use on a router. An engineer needs to verify the current setting and routers of the routing protocol in use on a router. Which command should be used to obtain this information? needs to verify the current setting and timers of the routing protocol. Option A, display IP OSPF interface synopsis. Option B, display IP routing table. Option C, display IP OSPF. Option D, display IP protocol. Let's guess your answer. The correct answer is display IP protocol. Why this is correct? CCNA focused. Display IP protocol shows which routing protocol are running, RIP key, OSPF key, EIGRP, etc. Timers, update, invalid, hold down, plus timers सबै देखिन्छ. करेन्ट सेटिङहरू जस्तै नेटवर्क एडभर्टाइज्ड, एडमिनिस्ट्रेटिभ डिस्टेन्स, प्यासिभ इन्टरफेस सबै देखिन्छ. दिस इज एक्ज्याक्टली what the question asks. Current setting and timers of the routing protocol in use. Display IP protocol shows. So display IP OSPF, right? Display IP protocol OSPF and display IP protocols. Okay, display IP protocols. The command display in protocols is used to view the parameters and current timer setting of the routing protocol configured on the device. This helps a diagnosis and validating protocol configuration. The display in routing table command. The display IP routing table command provides a list of routes in the routing table, not protocol specifies. Display IP OSPF gives detail about the OSPF process itself, not all the routing protocol. Question number 4. Which process does a computer perform first when it needs to send data over a network to another computer? Which process does a computer perform? Which process does a computer perform? Which process does a computer perform first when it needs to send data over a network to another computer? When it needs to send data over a network to another computer, which process does a computer perform? Option A, computer looks up the gateway hardware address. Option B, computer wraps the data in a network frame. Option C, computer checks if the receiving address is within its local network. Option D, computer sends a request to find out recipient's hardware address. Let's check with the computer checks if the receiving address is within its local network. Is the right answer? Okay, the correct answer is the computer checks if the receiving address is within its local network. Question once again. Which process does a computer perform first when it needs to send data over a network to another computer? Computer checks. The right answer is the computer checks if the receiving address is within its local network. The correct answer is computer checks if the receiving address is within its local network. When the computer plans to send data over a network, it first figures out if the recipient is on the same network or not. This is done by examining its own IP address and subnet mask to see if they fall within the same range as the destination address. Next question. Question number 5. In an OSPF network, what are the functions of the designated router DR and backup designated router BDR? Select 2. Option A, The DR and BDR take turns processing LSAs. Option B, the BDR is selected based on the lowest priority value. Option C, the DR is responsible for synchronizing LSAs within the same subnet. And option D, no DR or BDR roles are assigned on point-to-point connection. This is correct, and I need to choose another option. The DR and BDR takes turns processing LSA हो कि the BDR is elected based on the lowest priority value हो कि BDR is selected कस्तो अवस्थामा BDR selected गरिन्छ भने on the lowest priority value अनुसार BDR selected गरिन्छ. अर्को अप्सनले के भन्छ, the DR is responsible for synchronizing LSAs within the same subnet. यो होला हो रहेछ. The correct answer is highlighted. The role of the DR in making sure that all routers are on the same subnet have synchronized LSAs. Improving network efficiency. On point-to-point link, there is no need of DR and BDR because these links involve only two devices. Incorrect choices include the misconception of DR and BDR shared workload, which is not the case. The election of DR and BDR is based on the highest priority router ID, not the lowest. Question number 6. What are 3 accurate facts about configuring static default route in both IPv4 and IPv6 addresses? Select 3. In IPv6, option A, in IPv6 the notation for default route is represented as ::/0. Default route is default. What are 3 accurate facts about configuring static default route? Okay, static default route. In IPv6, the notation for the default route is represented as ::/0. हुन सक्छ एउटा राउन्ड एन्सर. Select 3 भनेको छ. Option 2, an IPv4 static default route can be set. IPv4 static default route can be set using the command iproute 0.0.0.0.000 Ethernet 0/0 हो यो पनि. Third option, if there is no match for an IPv6 packet, and no default route, the packet is dropped by the router. होइन यस्तो हुन सक्दैन. प्याकेट ड्रप गर्छ म्याच भएन भने. D, question D, using show IP route displays only IPv4 default route, not IPv6. होइन होला. show IP route भनेपछि IPv4 मात्र देखाउँछ र होइन होला. Last option, the prefix length for a default route is IPv6 is 64. The prefix length for a default route, prefix length कति हुन्छ डिफल्टमा /0 हुनु पर्ने, /64 भने मिलेन. कुन चाहिँ छान्ने त अब. if there is no match for an IPv6 packet, the packet is dropped by the router. म टिक लगाइदिन्छु. हो रहेछ, प्याकेट ड्रप गर्दो रहेछ. if there is no match for an IPv6 packet and no default route, the packet is dropped by the router. Question number 7. The command, if the command IP route 192.168.1.1 to 55.255.255.192 to 55.255.255.255 192.168.5.1 is executed, what type of route is being created? Single host route, dynamic static route, gateway of last resort, subnet route. डायनामिक स्टैटिक राउट हो कि सिंगल होस्ट राउट हो? सिंगल होस्ट राउट चलेको हो भने त आइपी राउट 192.168.1.1 हुन नपर्ने हो. नेक्स्ट हप चाहिँ त्यसको सबनेट मास्क चाहिँ अल 255 छ भनेपछि हो यो डायनामिक के अरे यो सिंगल होस्ट राउट होला हो रहेछ. द करेक्ट आन्सर इज सिंगल होस्ट राउट. अ होस्ट राउट direct traffic for a specific IP address. If a subnet mask of all 255 is used, this means every bit is set to 1, pointing only to one particular IP. This is commonly for precise host communication. Question number 8. A network engineer has configured OSPF across multiple errors in a network. After the configuration, all routers have fully connectivity except one router which is unable to access certain subnet. Question once again. A network engineer has configured OSPF across multiple routers in a network. After the configuration, all routers have full connectivity except one router which is unable to access certain subnet in the same OSPF area. Which of the following is the most probable cause? Option A, mismatched OSPF area ID on the router's interface. Option B, wrong DNS server sitting on the router. Option C, incorrect subnet mask on the router's interface. Option D, router has no default gateway configured. Which question के भनेको छ भने which of the following is the most probable cause हो के को लागि? After the configuration, all routers have been connectivity except one router which is unable to access certain subnet in the same OSPF area. Option A, mismatched OSPF area ID, wrong DNS server setting, incorrect subnet हो कि router has no default gateway configured हो कि incorrect subnet masks on the router's interface हो कि The right option is option A, mismatched OSPF area ID on the router's interface. The correct answer is that there is mismatched OSPF area ID on the router's interface. OSPF routers need to be in the same area, know, share and understand routing information correctly. If a router's interface is configured with a different OSPF area ID, then the and then ID, then the rest. It won't form never relationship affecting connectivity. Question number 9. You are configuring a branch office router to communicate with the head office. The router The router must establish connectivity using IPv4 as well as dynamically learn available routers from a neighboring router running OSPF. Which configure command should you use to enable OSPF routing on the branch office router for the network 192.168.10.0/24? Option A, router OSPF 1, network 192.168.10.0/0000, area 0. Right? So router OSPF 1, network 192.168.10.0, 0.0.0.255, area 0 should be the right answer. Okay. Question number 10. Which two statements accurately explain how quality of service QoS policing works? Choose two. It evaluates the data rate to ensure it aligns with the specified threshold. It evaluates the data rate to ensure it aligns with the specified threshold. Option B. It supports higher data flow after low traffic intervals. It supports higher data flow हो जस्तो लाग्यो. चुज टु भनेको छ. Option C. It can solely be applied on inbound traffic. Option D. Surpassing data packets are always discarded. It supports higher data flow after the low traffic intervals. एउटा यो भयो. अर्को, it evaluates the data rate to ensure it aligns with the specified threshold. It evaluates the data rate to ensure it aligns with the specified threshold. Okay. It can solely be applied on inbound traffic. Okay. Which two statements accurately explain how quality of service policing works? अर्को, it can solely be applied on an inbound traffic. Okay. Last को, surpassing data packets are always discarded. त्यति ठिक लागेन. अप्सन ए मा जान्छु म. अप्सन ए र बी नै सही रहेछ. अप्सन ए ले भन्छ it evaluates the data rate to ensure it always with the specified threshold. Option B ले भन्छ it supports higher data flow after low traffic intervals. The right answer emphasizes how QoS policing checks the rate of data against configured limit and always for temporary data usage after quiet periods. This describes policing as the method to monitor data speed and ensure traffic does not exceed allowed rates while still accommodating short increases in data flow. Question number 11. What are two accurate statements about the use of TCP port and FTP operation? Select two. TCP ports in FTP operation. Use of TCP port in FTP operation. Option A, an FTP control connections uses a specific TCP port. An FTP control connection uses a specific TCP port for issuing command. Oh. Option B, FTP operates rely on a single TCP port for data and commands. Rely on a single TCP port मा rely गर्छ FTP. FTP operations rely on a single TCP port for data and commands. Option C, an FTP data connection is designated to remove file from the directory. हैन. Option D, active FTP mode requires the client to provide a port command to the server. Active FTP mode requires the client to provide a port command to the server. थाहा भएन. अप्सन ए मा जान चाहन्छु म. ए र बी. अप्सन ए ले भन्छ एन एफटीपी कन्ट्रोल कनेक्सन युज अ स्पेसिफिक टीसीपी पोर्ट फर इस्युइङ कमान्ड र अप्सन बी ले भन्छ एफटीपी अपरेशन्स रिलाइ अन अ सिंगल टीसीपी पोर्ट फर डेटा एन्ड कमान्ड्स. मिलेन. पहिलो अप्सन ठिक थियो. एन एफटीपी कन्ट्रोल्स कनेक्सन युजेज अ स्पेसिफिक टीसीपी पोर्ट फर इस्युइङ कमान्ड र दोस्रो अप्सन यहाँ गलत भयो. मैले भनेको थिएँ एफटीपी अपरेशन्स रिलाइ अन अ सिंगल टीसीपी पोर्ट फर डेटा एन्ड कमान्ड्स, तर हुनुपर्ने के थियो यसको सट्टामा, जुन चाहिँ मैले भनेको रङ भयो. राइट के थियो भने एक्टिभ एफटीपी मोड रिक्वायर्स द क्लाइन्ट टु प्रोभाइड अ पोर्ट कमान्ड टु द सर्भर. Correct explanation. The file transfer protocol FTP uses separate TCP port to manage control and data connection. Specifically port 21 is typically used for control session where commands are exchanged within port 20 or other specified ports handle data traffic. Question number 12. What command should you use to ensure that a manually set route is correctly installed on a router? What command should you use to ensure that a manually set route is correctly installed on a router? Option A, show IP bindings. Option B, show IP route configured. Option C, show interface. Option D, show IP ARP. I would like to go with show IP route configured. That's correct answer. The right choice is show IP route configured because it displays detail about manually set route, providing visibility into the static routes set on the device. Question number 13. In a device is set to serve into the network. If a device is set to serve time to network but relies solely on its own internal clock without synchronizing with any external resources, which command configures this setting? Option A, NTP master. Option B, NTP synchronize. Option C, clock adjust. Option D, time update. To serve time to network. to serve time to network भनेपछि टाइम अपडेट हो कि क्लक एडजस्ट हो कि एनटिपी सिंक्रोनाइज हो कि एनटिपी मास्टर हो If a device is said to serve the time to network but relies solely on its own internal clock without synchronizing with any external resources, which command configure this configure this setting? I think NTP master, NTP adjust, NTP update, and time update, NTP master. Right. Question number 14. A network engineer is tasked with configuring a network engineer is tasked with confirming the NAT configuration, network address translation, NAT configuration for an internal server that has been paired with a public IP addresses using static NAT. What commands should they use to check that the address mapping is working as planned? A network engineer is tasked with configuring the NAT configuration for network address translate NAT configuration for an internal server that has been paired with the public IP address using static NAT. What command should they use to check that the address mapping is working as planned? Option A, show IP NAT mappings. Option B, show IP route detail. Option C, view NAT function matrix. Option D, display network interface summary. Option E, examine current network configuration. I can guess my answer. Show IP NAT mapping, view IP route detail, view NAT function matrix. Network engineer is tasked with confirming the NAT configuration for an internal server that has been paired with the public IP address using static NAT. What command should they use to check that the address mapping is working? Address mapping. Show IP NAT mappings. I would like to go with show IP NAT mappings. Right. The correct choice is show IP NAT mappings. This command allows you to see the NAT table displaying the current translations and address mapping made by the NAT process, including both internal and external IP address. Question 15. When setting up OSPF on a new router, when setting up a OSPF on a new router, the command router OSPF 5 is entered. What does the digit 5 signify in this context? OSPF network area, OSPF process identifier, OSPF router OSPF 5, unique router identifier, data link identifier, routing table entry, OSPF network area, process identifier. I would like to go with process identifier, and which is the right answer. The digit in the router OSPF 5 command is known as the process identifier. Question 16. In a company's network, there is a backup path with a slower connections connection intended for emergencies. In a company's network, there is a backup path with a slower connection intended for emergencies. How should a network engineer set up this spare route to ensure it is only used when the main path falls? Option A, in, implement a RIP route. B, configure with configure a direct static route. Option C, display on an OSPF route. Option C, display on OSPF route. Option D, configure a floating static route. How should a network engineer set up this spare route to ensure it is only used when the main route path falls? Configure a floating static route, display an OSPF route, configure or implement a RIP ID, display an OSPF route, configure a floating static route, configure a different static route, implementing a RIP. Question once again: how should a network engineer set up this spare router to ensure it is only used when the main path falls? In a company's network 3, there is a backup path with a slower connection intended for emergencies. How should a network engineer set up this spare route to ensure it is only used when the main path falls? Implement RIP route. Configure a direct static route. Display an OSPF route. Configure a floating static route. Okay. The right answer was configure a floating static route. Using floating static route allows it to act as a backup route with a higher administrative distance. It only becomes active when the primary router is unavailable, preventing unnecessary use under normal conditions. Next question. Question 17. What command allows a network administrator to check which interfaces on a router are set as the primary or backup router in OSPF? What command allows a network administrator to check which interface on a router are set as the primary or which is backup? Option A, show IP OSPF peers. Option B, show IP OSPF interface summary. Option C, show IP routing. Option D, show IP OSPF configuration. Show IP OSPF interface summary. Show IP routing. Show IP OSPF peers. What command allows a network administrator to check which interface on a route are set as the primary or backup? Show IP OSPF peers. Show IP OSPF interface summary. Show IP routing. Show IP OSPF configuration. I would like to go with a show IP OSPF interface summary. Alright, that's a correct question. Option. The correct answer is show IP OSPF interface summary. This command provides intention. This command provides information about each interface's role in OSPF, including which are the designated and backup designated routers, also designated routes. It also gives detail on protocol identifiers, area IP, addresses, mask, and a simple and a summary of adjacency and with neighbor. Question number 18. What is the term used to describe a network server's positional reference to the official network's line time? What is the term used to describe a network server's positional references to the official network time? Option A, meta tag. Option B, link state. Option C, stratum. Option D, MTTF. Stratum, link state, meta tag. What is the term used to describe a network server's positional interface? Link state, stratum. Let's choose. Let's choose the option network server. Describe network server's positional references. Link state, stratum. I would like to go with link state. No, stratum, stratum. The term stratum refers to the level of a devices in comparison to a conference clock in a network. This is used to measure this deviation from the primary time resources. The smaller the stratum number, the closed it is to the accurate source. Question 19. A network administrator is setting up DHCP for a new branches office with multiple VLANs. Which IP helper address configuration is necessary? A network administrator is setting up a DHCP for a new branches office with multiple VLANs. Which IP helper address configuration is necessary on the router interface to ensure that DHCP requests are properly forwarding to the DHCP server? अर्को क्वेसनमा जाउँ या यो क्वेसनलाई स्किप गरौँ. क्वेसन एकचोटि फेरि पढौँ. A network administrator is setting up a DHCP for a new branch office with multiple VLANs. Which IP helper address configuration is necessary on the router interface to ensure that DHCP requests are properly forwarded to the DHCP server located on a different subnet? Option A, enable DHCP snooping on all switch port connected to the client. Option B, set a default route to the DHCP server on the router. Option C, configure the IP helper address with the DHCP server IP on each VLAN interface. Last option, use proxy ARP on the router. Proxy ARP on the router to reach the DHCP server. To reach the DHCP server, use proxy ARP on the router. Configure the IP helper address with the DHCP server's IP on the VLAN interface. That's correct. Configuring IP helper address on each VLAN interface of the router ensures that DHCP request broadcast from clients on different subnet are directed to the DHCP server. IP helper address converts layer 2 broadcast to layer 3 unicast, forwarding them to the designated DHCP server IP address. Question number 20. You are the network administrator for a small office network with several VLANs configured on a single layer 3 switch. Users from VLAN 10 are unable to reach the internet, but they can communicate with other VLAN. What could be the cause of this issue? The option A, the switch port connecting to the interface is down. The switch port connecting to the interface is down. Spanning tree protocol is blocking the VLAN. VLAN 10 is not assigned an IP address. VLAN 10 is not assigned an IP address. Option D, the default gateway for VLAN 10 is not set on the host. I think this is the one. Alright. The correct answer is the default gateway for VLAN 10 is not set on the host. The default gateway on the host must be configured correctly for traffic to be routed to on the host must be configured correctly for the traffic to be routed to external networks such as the internet. Without the correct default gateway setting, host cannot send traffic beyond the local subnet. Question 21. To initiate OSPF routing on a network device, which configuration command should be entered? To initiate OSPF routing on a network device, which configuration command should be entered? router-id 2.2.2.0 हो कि CDP enable हो कि activate OSPF हो कि router OSPF 10 हो कि OSPF set 10 हो. जहाँसम्म लाग्छ यसको राइट एन्सर चाहिँ राउटर OSPF 10 हो. तर यसले ट्रिक गरेको छ. कता कता मलाई router-id 2.2.2.2 पनि हो कि जस्तो लाग्छ. To initiate OSPF routing र OSPF routing सुरु गर्नको लागि on a network device, which configuration command should be entered? Router OSPF 10, router ID 2.2.2.2. I would like to go with router OSPF 10. Okay, that's the right answer. The command router OSPF 10 is used to begin the OSPF routing process with a specified process ID of 10. Question number 22. What is the initial action taken by a router when it receives a data packet? Option A, the router matches the packet's address with its routing table. Option B, the router checks to see if it should handle the frame. The router checks to see if it should handle the traffic. The router checks to see if it should handle the frame. Option C, the router releases the frame through the outgoing port. Option D, the router removes all layers from the frame to access the packet. Option E, the router sends the packet out to the network. I think the right answer is the router checks to see if it should handle the frame, or the router matches the packet's address with its routing table. यो होला हैन. The router checks to see if it should handle that frame. Okay, the correct answer. The router checks to see if it should handle the traffic frame is the correct answer. This step involves the route making sure the frame is free and error free of error and matched the router's address before processing. Once confirmed, the router will continue processing by removing the packet from the frame. Next, it will check the packet's destination against the routing table. Following this, the packet is prepared the encapsulation for forwarding to the next hub. Question number 23. What should a network technician do to ensure that all router interfaces on the same subnet use OSPF v2 in a single area? What should a network technician do to ensure that all routers, including all router interfaces on the same subnet use OSPF2 in a single area? What should a network technician do to ensure that all router interfaces on the same subnet use OSPF version 2 in a single network area? Option A, use only a loopback address for router identification. Okay. Option B, set a separate static route for each subnet. Okay. Option C, configure all interfaces with a single OSPF area. Okay. Option D, enable passive mode on all interfaces for OSPF. I would like to go with set a separate static route for each subnet. Okay, just like option A ले भन्छ use only a loopback address होइन. Option C ले भन्छ configure all interfaces with a single OSPF area भन्छ. Configure all interfaces. All interfaces within a single area network. अर्को क्वेसन जाउँ. अनि अर्को अप्सन enable passive mode on all interfaces. The OSPF interfaces for OSPF को लागि enable passive mode यो हो कि मलाई चाहिँ सबभन्दा राम्रो अप्सन use only a loopback address for होइन. Set as a separate static route for each subnet होइन. Separate static route for each subnet पनि हो. Configure all interfaces within a single OSPF area त्यो पनि हो. Enable passive mode on all interfaces for OSPF पनि हो. I would like to go with option B. No, option C is the right answer. Configure all interfaces with a single OSPF area. Say right answer. Configure all interfaces within a single OSPF area. Question 24. For an IPv6 static host route, what should the subnet mask length be? IPv6 static route for host route /28 host route /128. Question number 25. Identify two multicast address that facilitate communication from DR and BDR to other routers in OSPF network? Select 2. Option A 224.0.0.5, option B 239.0.0, option C 239. Option D 224.0.0.6, option E 239.0.0. Identify two multicast addresses. Identify two multicast addresses that facilitate communication from DRBDR to other routers in OSPF network. Select 2. 224 नै गरौँ, मल्टिकास्ट भनेको 224 मल्टिकास्ट हो, एउटा 1 224 अर्को 224. द्याट्स द राइट एन्सर.